her up and she had to end up getting her teeth capped. I remember her telling me, but I didn't want to hear it.
Tammy Terrell's story is one of talent, tragedy, and a music career that should have lasted way longer than it did. Her journey wasn't just about music, it was about survival. From abusive relationship with James Brown to her toxic relationship with David Ruffin, the relationships that should have lifted her up instead left her with scars, both seen and unseen. Most people know her as Marvin Gaye's legendary duet partner, but before she was singing Ain't No Mountain High Enough, she was already deep in the industry. Too deep, too young, and surrounded by men who saw her as more than just a rising star. This is the real story of Tammy Terrell, the talent, the pain, and the truth behind the woman we lost way too soon. Before she became Marvin Gaye's duet partner, she was already singing alongside another music icon, James Brown.
This is a man's world.
And that's where things got messy. Tammy was just 17 when she joined James Brown's tour as a backup singer, and let's just say things didn't stay professional for long. Brown, who was in his 30s at the time, saw more than just talent in her, and their situation went from business to something way more complicated, and not in a cute mentor and protege way. This was straight up messy, with an ending that was anything but pretty. Her mom wasn't exactly thrilled about her baby girl hitting the road with a crew of grown men in the fast-paced music world. But James's team promised she'd be taken care of, specifically by his assistant, Gertie. Well, that protection didn't exactly play out as expected. Either Gertie wasn't paying attention, or she was straight up making it easier for Brown to spend time with Tammy outside of work. Whatever the case, he had full access to her, and their relationship became part of the job in ways that had nothing to do with music.
James Brown, he was like the man. And if you knew James Brown or worked with James Brown, you had a ride.
It started with gifts, expensive ones. Then came the cash, the fancy hotels, and all the extra perks James Brown was throwing Tammy's way as they hopped from city to city. But one of those hotel stays? Yeah, that's where things took a turn. A lot of people have asked about that incident, when James Brown was caught in Tammy's bed. And yes, it happened, but not at her parents' house. According to Tammy's sister, here's how it went down. The tour made a stop in New York, and Tammy's mom and sister came to visit. The three of them spent the day out shopping, completely unaware of what they were about to walk into. When they got back to her hotel room, there he was, James Brown, knocked out in her bed. He then wakes up, acted all polite, said his hellos, and then dipped. Meanwhile, their mom was not okay. She looked shaken, confused, because obviously, why was a grown man sleeping in her teenage daughter's bed? But James's assistant, Gertie, tried to brush it off, assuring her that she was keeping an eye on things. Yeah, no. Tammy's family didn't see much that day, but they eventually found out what was really going on. James wasn't just sleeping in her bed. He was with her, and it got way. The relationship wasn't just inappropriate, it was violent.
She had told me that James used to hit her regularly, in the head, among other places.
She was getting hurt, repeatedly, and two male singers later confirmed it. The last time he put his hands on her, she turned to another singer, Gene Chandler, for help. People know him for Duke of Earl. But that day, he was just someone Tammy hoped could get her out. Gene later said he saw what was going on, and when Tammy came to him for help, he wasted no time. He called her parents. Ludi described what happened on their end of that phone call. Their mom picked up and immediately knew something was wrong. Tammy was in trouble. She was coming home. James had beaten her badly, and she was done.
And the flowers.
Her dad took it hard. He knew James. He trusted him, but honestly, feeling hurt wasn't enough. After everything Tammy had been through, he should have done more than just sit with his feelings. A real conversation, maybe even a little hands-on approach, would have sent the message loud and clear. When Tammy got home, she looked drained, like she had nothing left to give. Turns out, she'd been trying to escape for a while, but was scared of what would happen if she broke her contract. While her mom and Ludi were unpacking her things in the basement, they found a blue silk dress James had given her. It wasn't just any dress. It had blood all over it. That's when they realized just how bad things had gotten. And the worst part? The incident involved an umbrella in ways that were straight up horrifying. Then there's Bobby Bennett, who used to be in James's group. He said that James once pointed a gun at him, accusing him of snitching about another woman. Bobby wasn't about to let that slide. He went after James and tried to smash his head through iron bars at their hotel. Those two had their own messy drama, but when it came to abuse, it would seem James saved the worst for the women in his life.
He beat her up and she had to end up getting her teeth capped. I remember her telling me, but I didn't want to hear it.
Bobby knew exactly what was going on with Tammy. He straight up said James beat her so bad she was bleeding. She finally left because she wasn't about to stick around and keep getting hurt. And James's violence didn't stop with her. Bobby also claimed he saw James kick a pregnant girlfriend down a flight of stairs. After the first time James put his hands on Tammy, she spent most of her time in public trying to hide the damage. And when that situation finally ended, if you can even call it a relationship, things didn't get any better. She ended up with David Ruffin, and that was just more of the same. Tammy and David got together thinking it was going to be something special, but it didn't take long for things to go south. What started off looking like a great match turned into a mess real quick. David popped the question, and Tammy said yes, probably thinking she was about to start a new chapter. But right after they made it official in front of a crowd, she found out he was already married, had 3 kids, and was juggling another relationship back in Detroit. That realization hit hard, and she was devastated. Their relationship was a mess, with claims of physical abuse making things even worse. Ruffin's drug use only added fuel to the fire. At one point, he allegedly hit Tammy in the head with his motorcycle helmet, and that was her breaking point. She walked away for good. Tammy Terrell had been dealing with migraines since she was a kid, but she always felt like the stress from her relationship with David Ruffin made them even worse. Things took a serious turn when she collapsed on stage, and doctors found out she had a brain tumor. She went through multiple surgeries, but her health just kept getting worse. People still talk about how rough Tammy Terrell's relationship with David Ruffin was, and how everything that followed took a toll on her. Some of the more extreme rumors, like him hitting her with a hammer, have been questioned, but one thing is clear. Things between them were toxic, and it left a mark on both of their lives. David's relationship with drugs is very well documented. David was talented, no question, but his talent was constantly battling his demons. His addiction to started messing with his life, making him unreliable and causing tension with the Temptations. Skipped rehearsals, missed shows, it all added up, and eventually he was out of the group. Going solo had its moments, but the drugs kept pulling him down. Legal trouble followed, from tax issues to drug charges, and even a short prison stint. Rehab programs came and went, but staying clean was a struggle.
Of age, alcohol and all types of drugs were just a part of the David Ruffin.
Then, in the early 90s, it all caught up to him. Ruffin passed away from an overdose, a heartbreaking end to a life that could have been so much more. His voice was unforgettable, but his struggles left a shadow over everything he built. But not all Tammy's relationships with men were so heartbreaking. She had good ones too, and we'll get to that. But let's rewind a little bit. There's some history here, one that some people might argue was indicative of her ending up in relationships with men like these. Tammy Terrell was born Thomasina Winifred Montgomery in Philly. Her mom tried to make it as an actress but never really got her big break, while her dad ran a successful barbershop. When her parents were expecting their first baby, they were so sure it'd be a boy that they had the name Thomas ready to go. But when she turned out to be a girl, they just rolled with it and named her Thomasina instead.
She was just such a lively, vivacious, charismatic.
Later on, she got a little sister named Ludi.
A lot of camaraderie and love in this home.
Ludi later wrote a book about Tammy's life called My Sister Tommy, The Real Tammy Terrell, where she shared everything, the highs and the heartbreaking lows. One of the hardest things Tammy went through happened when she was still a kid. After leaving a neighborhood party, she was attacked by 3 boys. They got locked up, but the damage was done. It was something that stuck with her forever, so much so that they say she became promiscuous after that incident. She gave in because she thought that was what was expected of her. It's not uncommon with victims of abuse. Tammy just wanted to be loved and accepted.
Under the rug. Certain aspects of Tammy's personality kind of metamorphosized into extremes.
Also, it was not long after that the headaches started. At first, her family didn't think much of it, but they just kept coming back. Even with all that going on, she had something special: her voice. She could sing, and from a young age, she was already turning heads. She started entering local singing competitions and racking up wins left and right. Her talent opened doors, and before she knew it, she was sharing the stage with big names like Patti LaBelle and the Bluebells. By the time Tammy was 15, she was already signing deals and laying down tracks in the studio. She was on her way up, but her story wasn't going to be as long as it should have been. Life wasn't easy for her. Her mom struggled with mental health issues, which made things tense at home. Music was her escape, but the stress of it all weighed on her. She had to be tough, but that didn't mean it was easy. Tammy wasn't just talented, she was smart. She got into the University of Pennsylvania to study pre-med because at one point she thought about becoming a doctor, but music kept pulling her back. She ended up leaving school to chase her dream, which was a huge decision. And like anyone taking a big risk, she had moments where she questioned if she made the right call. Tammy linked up with Checker Records and dropped a track called If I Would Marry You with Jimmy Radcliffe. She even had a hand in writing it. But when the song flopped, she was crushed. That disappointment made her step away from music for a while. While she was hitting the books, singer Jerry Butler asked her to join him for some nightclub gigs. She wasn't sure at first. School was still a priority, but Butler made sure she could balance both. So, she hit the road with him. Then, during a show at the 20 Grand Club in Detroit, Motown's CEO Berry Gordy caught her performance. He was blown away and didn't waste time. He told her he had to sign her. Tammy made it official with Motown on her 20th birthday and wasted no time getting to work. She dropped Can't Believe You Love Me, and it took off on the R&B charts. She kept the momentum going with Come On and See Me, and later recorded All I Do Is Think About You by Stevie Wonder, and This Old Heart of Mine Is Weak for You by the Isley Brothers. Her career was heating up fast. She even joined the Motown Revue, opening for The Temptations like it was just another day at work. Tammy's career shot to a whole new level when she teamed up with Marvin Gaye. He'd already done duets with other singers, but when he heard Tammy, he knew she was something special. Their first big moment, Ain't No Mountain High Enough, written by Ashford and Simpson. Fun fact, they actually recorded their parts separately, and Motown later mixed them together, ditching the background singers so their voices really popped.
Ain't no mountain high enough. Ain't no mountain.
The song was a massive hit and officially put Tammy on the map. Then came Your Precious Love, which blew up even bigger. And before the year was over, they dropped If I Could Build My Whole World Around You, which also went crazy on the charts.
If I could build my whole world around you, darling. First.
Even the B-side, If This World Were Mine, got love, and Marvin later shared that it was one of Tammy's personal favorites.
I'd give you anything.
If This World Were Mine made a little noise on the charts, and just like that, Tammy and Marvin became one of Motown's hottest duos. All four of their hits landed on their first duet album, United. With all that success, people couldn't help but wonder, were they a thing or not? The chemistry was obvious, but the truth? Strictly platonic. Tammy and Marvin had nothing but love and respect for each other. But while things with Marvin were all good, that was when her relationship with David was falling apart, just like things had with James Brown. Thanks to their hit songs, Tammy and Marvin became one of the biggest duos in music. Their first duet album, United, dropped that summer and was a major win. They were everywhere, on stage, on TV, and Tammy even helped Marvin get over his stage fright. When Tammy passed, it wrecked him. She wasn't just a duet partner. She was one of the few people in the industry he truly connected with. Their chemistry was next level, both in the studio and off stage. Losing her wasn't just heartbreaking, it shattered him. He completely withdrew, started distancing himself from Motown, and suddenly love songs felt meaningless. How do you keep singing about romance when life can be that cruel? He wasn't just grieving her, he was questioning everything. Losing Tammy messed him up bad. He started questioning everything, his career, the industry, even himself. This wasn't just about losing a friend. It was a brutal wake-up call about how unfair life could be. All that pain was building up, and instead of letting it destroy him, he poured it into his music. That's how What's Going On was born. He was over the whole polished, feel-good act. He wanted to talk about real stuff: war, injustice, the struggle. You can hear it in his voice. All the pain and frustration he'd been carrying. Losing Tammy flipped a switch in him, and after that, there was no turning back. Even after all that time, he never really got past it. It stuck with him. She was young, crazy talented, and they had so much left to do. That loss didn't just hurt. It shaped everything. His music, his decisions, even the way he saw the world. People felt their songs in a way that went beyond just good music. Fans were obsessed with their chemistry, and for good reason. They had something special. In 1970, they were officially named the top R&B duo of the year, and when they hit the stage, they had the legendary Funk Brothers backing them up, making every performance unforgettable. Also, it must have been something in the water with these men, because even though Marvin was good to her, Marvin wasn't always good. Marvin had his own issues too. Marvin's struggles with drugs were tangled up in everything: his career, his relationships, his entire life. And in the end, they played a huge part in how his story ended. He first started with weed, but by the late 70s, things got way more serious. Cocaine took over, messing with his relationships and even his work. But instead of hiding it, he poured it into his music. His album, Here My Dear, was basically an open diary about his messy love life and addiction. And Time to Get It Together straight up called out his fight with drugs. By the early 80s, the paranoia had him in a chokehold. He was convinced people were out to get him, even thought someone was trying to poison him. It got so bad that during his healing tour, he was wearing a bulletproof vest off stage and making his bodyguards do the same. Hoping for a reset, he moved to Belgium with the help of a promoter. For a while, it worked. He cut back on drugs, got into fitness, even started going to church. But the second he came back to the US, it all fell apart again. The drug use got worse. His mental health took a nosedive. And things with his dad, already tense, got even worse. Everything boiled over in the most tragic way. After a heated argument, his father shot him, ending it all. His legacy? It's complicated. A genius, no doubt, but also a man fighting demons that never really let him go. Tammy went through it in her final years. She was dealing with a serious brain tumor, went through multiple surgeries, but nothing worked. Her health kept going downhill, and she passed away way too young. While going through all of this, Tammy had someone in her corner, Dr. Ernie Garrett, a doctor from the hospital where she was getting treated. They got engaged, and he stuck with her through everything. Even with everything she was going through, Tammy made one last, unforgettable appearance at the Apollo. She was just in the crowd, but when Marvin Gaye spotted her, he pulled her up on stage. They sang, "You're All I Need to Get By" together, and the whole place went crazy, giving them a massive standing ovation. It was a raw, emotional moment that showed just how much they meant to each other and how much Tammy's music meant to everyone watching. They held Tammy's funeral at Jane's Methodist Church in Philly. Marvin Gaye, her closest friend in the industry, gave a heartfelt speech while their song "You're All I Need to Get By" played. Her mom wasn't having most of Motown there, though. Marvin was one of the only ones she let in. Tammy's music still hits deep, especially her duets with Marvin. People are still feeling them to this day. Tammy didn't just exist in the 60s music scene, she made sure people felt her presence. A young black woman with a voice that could hit you right in the soul, she wasn't just Marvin Gaye's singing partner. She was a star in her own right. She poured her heart into every song, mixing strength and vulnerability in a way that still hits today. She dealt with industry drama, toxic relationships, and serious health struggles, but that didn't stop her from leaving behind songs that still go hard. Ain't No Mountain High Enough and You're All I Need to Get By weren't just cute love songs. They were about loyalty, resilience, and pushing through. Her influence went way beyond music. In a business that didn't make space for young black women, she forced the door open with talent and authenticity. Her time here was way too short, but she made sure the world wouldn't forget her.